Bored out of my mind during a lecture, I decided to text my online crush. "Sis, Venmo me $50 for strawberries. I'll pay you back. On your neck next time." The very next second, the exact same message popped up on the auditorium's massive screen. On stage, the professor, renowned for her untouchable elegance, remained unfazed and calmly replied, "Sweetheart, I'm working. Let's talk tonight." I was stunned. It all started because my roommate Ryan dragged me around to attend lectures for extra credits. In 3 hours, 5 professors took turns delivering speeches, leaving me numb from sitting too long. When the 6th professor took the stage, the room erupted into gasps of excitement. Ryan practically grabbed my arm, shrieking, "Jordy, look! Dr. Lee is here!" I looked up. It was none other than the youngest and most legendary professor at our university, Lily. She joined the faculty not long ago, but her ethereal beauty and cool, unapproachable demeanor had already earned her the title of the untouchable flower among the male students. Even as she adjusted the projector slides on stage, she looked otherworldly. I found myself mesmerized, staring at her long, graceful fingers. Then I noticed something peculiar, a red and green braided string bracelet on her wrist, the exact same good luck charm I had recommended to my online crush a while back. Thinking of my online crush brought a flood of images to my mind, especially the seductive photo she had sent me last night. Her slender waist and alluring figure had left quite an impression. I couldn't resist pulling up our chat history. Her last message was about going to work, so she was probably busy right now. Feeling mischievous, I quickly typed, "Sis, Venmo me $50 for strawberries. I'll pay you back. On your neck next time," and hit send. The moment I sent it, the auditorium erupted into chaos. The reaction was even louder than when Lily had walked on stage. Ryan clutched my arm, screaming, "Oh my gosh, Jordy, look! Is that Dr. Lee's boyfriend?" Confused, I looked up and saw my message displayed on the giant screen. Meanwhile, Lily, who had been calmly scrolling through her messaging app on the projector, swiftly closed the chat window and pulled out her phone. Seconds later, I received a reply from my online crush. "Sweetheart, I'm working. Let's talk tonight." I sat there, slack-jawed. The commotion in the auditorium showed no signs of dying down. "Did you see that? Dr. Lee's nickname for her boyfriend is Sweetheart, and he's her only pinned chat. That's so romantic. Ugh. Nothing's more heartbreaking than finding out Dr. Lee has a boyfriend. I feel so betrayed. Can you imagine what it's like to date someone with a face like hers? Her boyfriend must be living the dream." Ryan turned to me wide-eyed. "Oh, by the way, Jordy, I noticed Dr. Lee's boyfriend's profile picture looks just like yours. What a coincidence, huh?" I forced a laugh. "Ha, really? I didn't notice." Disappointed by my lack of enthusiasm, Ryan turned back to gossip with others. Meanwhile, my heart was racing as I stared at Lily on stage. The matching good luck bracelet, the identical profile picture, the exact same message. It was all crystal clear. Lily was my online crush. But the contrast was overwhelming. I couldn't reconcile the elegant, composed professor in front of me with the flirtatious, bold woman who had sent me those risque pictures. My face flushed as I thought about it. Was this really the same person? For the rest of the lecture, I was in a daze, barely hearing a word. I could only watch Lily's lips move as she spoke, my mind consumed by those images. After the lecture ended, Lily left in a hurry. As she walked out, I overheard a few guys in the front row whispering, "Did you hear? Dr. Lee said she's rushing home to see her boyfriend." My heart skipped a beat. On my way back to the dorm, my phone buzzed non-stop with messages from Lily. "Sweetheart, why aren't you replying? I'm done with work now. Want to pick up where we left off? What's my baby up to? Why'd you ghost me after reeling me in? By the way, I forgot to Venmo you $50 for those strawberries earlier. Oh, and I just transferred you $5,000. Why aren't you responding?" Staring at her messages, I felt overwhelmed. It was hard to imagine Lily, with her composed demeanor, saying these things. At the same time, I felt a bit embarrassed and didn't know how to reply. Before I could figure it out, Sophie, a senior from next door, popped in to deliver a message. "Jordan, Trevor needs you to check his computer again. It's acting up." Trevor was my advisor. Ever since I'd helped fix his computer once, he'd started relying on me for tech support. I didn't dare refuse, so I hurried over to his office. When I arrived, I was surprised to see Lily sitting at the desk across from Trevor's. She was quietly scrolling through her phone, looking a little upset. I tried not to stare and focused on fixing Trevor's computer. Once I was done, Trevor beamed at me. "I knew I could count on you, Jordy. Oh, by the way, Dr. Lee mentioned that her messaging app isn't working. Can you take a look at it for her?" He gestured toward Lily. I froze, instantly realizing why her app wasn't working. This wasn't exactly something I could fix, but under Trevor's expectant gaze, I had no choice but to comply. Clearing my throat, I walked over and deepened my voice. "Dr. Lee, Trevor said your app isn't working. Want me to take a look?" Lily seemed lost in thought and flinched slightly when I spoke. She immediately shifted away, keeping a polite but distant demeanor. Her reaction was perfect. I was about to use it as an excuse to make a quick getaway. Lily's gaze suddenly froze on my hand. I was holding my phone, the screen lit up, displaying a photo of a puppy as my lock screen. In that instant, I remembered that I had once sent many pictures of my family dog to my online girlfriend. I had even picked my favorite one to use as my lock screen. Noticing Lily's increasingly intense stare, I hastily shoved my phone into my pocket. "Dr. Lee," I stammered, "if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now." But Lily suddenly spoke. "Wait a moment." She reached out to block my way. "Can I take a look at your phone's lock screen?" My heart immediately jumped to my throat. Could she have recognized it? Instinctively, I covered the pocket holding my phone, stammering even more. It's probably not very convenient." Lily frowned slightly. "Why not?" I blurted out without thinking. "Because my lock screen is very private." Lily paused for a moment, then a look of apology appeared on her face. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. It's just that the puppy on your lock screen looks a lot like one that once saved me. I really wanted to confirm. If it's not convenient, you could block out any private parts." Her words left me dumbfounded. When had my dog ever saved her? But under Lily's earnest gaze, which seemed so hopeful about finding her rescue dog, I inexplicably pulled out my phone to show her. She leaned in for just a glance and her expression immediately shifted. When her eyes met mine again, there was a new mix of curiosity and expectation in them. "Was this your family's dog?" she asked softly. I quickly yanked my phone back. "I'd been too careless." "Rescue dog?" She was obviously testing me. "No, of course not," I said, shaking my head furiously as my brain raced for a response. "It's my brother's dog." Lily tilted her head, looking puzzled. "Your brother?" I nodded vigorously, trying to stay calm. I discreetly opened my phone again, logged into a secondary account, and pulled up old chat records where I had sent various test photos to this account. "Yeah, see?" I pointed to the photos. "These were sent to me by my brother at the time." Lily leaned closer to look, her eyes lighting up suddenly. She pointed to the profile picture of my main account. "Is this your brother?" A wave of unease swept over me. I quickly distanced myself. "But actually, we're not that close," I clarified. Lily, however, seemed thrilled, and even reached out to shake my hand. "Classmate, could you leave me your contact information? I might need your help in the future." Honestly, I didn't want to give Lily my contact info. But as she spoke, her eyes darted toward Trevor, who was standing not far away. Trevor knew my main account. If Lily asked him for my contact, I'd be completely exposed. So I quickly added her using my secondary account, flashing her an enthusiastic smile. "Of course, Dr. Lee." The moment I turned away, my face fell. What a mess, seriously. Even though Lily, as my online girlfriend, was always sweet and accommodating toward me, that was because she liked my online persona. If she found out that I was her student in real life, and worse, that she had once sent me suggestive photos and flirted shamelessly with me, her personality would make her die of embarrassment. At that point, not only would she break up with me, but she might also make my life miserable at school. The best solution might be for me to quietly break up with her first. Though honestly, I felt a bit reluctant. As I walked along, I received another barrage of messages from Lily. "JJ, I just found out one of my students is your brother. Isn't that such a coincidence? He even uses your dog's photo as his lock screen. You two must be really close, huh? Don't misunderstand, JJ. I just happened to see it, not intentionally snooping on you."
"Why aren't you replying to me? Transfer, $20,000. Reading her messages one after another, I felt a whirlwind of emotions.
Finally, I gritted my teeth and turned on Do Not Disturb mode. When I got back to my dorm, I tidied up a bit and logged into my secondary account, only to find that Lily had messaged me there as well. "Jordan, could you help me get in touch with your brother?" I deliberately waited a while before replying, "Sorry, Dr. Lee, I can't." I thought that would make her drop it, but the next moment my eyes widened in disbelief. Lily had decisively messaged my main account. "JJ, are you in trouble? Wait for me, I'm calling the police right now." I froze. What the hell, the police? That would be the end of me. What kind of logic was this? My fingers flew across the keyboard. "Sis, I'm here. I accidentally fell asleep this afternoon." Lily immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank goodness. You scared me, baby. You haven't eaten yet, have you? Accept the transfer and go get some food. When you didn't reply earlier, I felt so anxious. JJ, you wouldn't abandon me, right?" Reading her message, I felt a surge of indescribable emotions, like something had stabbed me deep inside. Lily had always been so considerate and generous toward me, willing to spend money on me and even send me photos of herself. Was I really such a terrible person for thinking about breaking up with her? But if I kept this up, how much longer could I hide the truth? The more I thought about it, the sadder I felt. My nose tingled, and 2 hot tears rolled down my cheeks. Just then, Ryan walked past and was startled. "Jordy, what's wrong?" When I turned to him, my vision was blurred with tears. Ryan gave me a firm pat on the shoulder, his expression serious. "Who bullied you?" Ray asked, his expression instantly turning aggressive, as if ready to pick a fight. I couldn't help but choke up and stammer, "Ray, what would you do if you found out your online partner is someone you could never be with in real life?" He let out a sigh of relief. "Oh, that's it? Just break up, man. It's just a girl. Look at you. You're not going to have trouble finding someone else." Then, as if struck by another thought, he added, "Wait, did she ever spend money on you? I've heard some people demand their money back after a breakup." I froze for a moment. Victoria had indeed spent quite a bit of money on me. While I hadn't accepted everything, she wasn't the type of person to demand it back, right? Noticing my hesitation, Ryan patted me on the shoulder. "Relax, man. Even if she did spend money, it's not a big deal. Just don't burn bridges with her when you break up." Out of fear that Victoria might report me, I didn't dare cut ties with her outright. But remembering Ryan's advice, I also didn't want to make things too tense. Torn between these thoughts, I reluctantly sent her a message, "What's on your mind?" She replied almost instantly, "I knew you were the best. Do you want more pictures today? You seem to really enjoy the ones I sent last night." My face instantly flushed. Was I that obvious? Now that I knew the photos last night were of Victoria, the thrill was undeniable, but so was my hesitation. "Maybe not," I replied. She responded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Why not? I like sending them to you." Still uncertain, I hesitated to ask for more. But 10 minutes later, Victoria began sending a series of photos. Each one showed her from different angles, her figure on full display. One particular photo caught my attention. Her pants were pulled low, revealing the sharp lines of her toned waist and the faint outline of her V-line, which seemed to extend endlessly downward. My eyes were glued to the screen. "Is this okay?" she asked. It was more than okay. But as I thought back to the buttoned-up blouses Victoria always wore during her lectures, I felt like I was committing a crime. This was Victoria, after all. I forced myself to reply, "Please stop sending these, sis. I don't like them." She sent back a confused emoji. "But you were so happy last night." She even included screenshots of my messages from the night before, filled with nosebleed emojis and comments like, "Pull your pants down a little more." Sis! I was speechless. This was utterly scandalous, completely inappropriate. I closed my eyes and tried to convince myself that was the old me. "I've changed now, sis." Victoria sent a crying emoji and didn't message me again for a long time. Later, when I logged into my alternate account, I saw that she had messaged me there. "Jordan, can you ask your brother what he thinks of his girlfriend? Is he in a bad mood today?" Determined to keep up the charade, I played dumb. "Girlfriend? Does he have a girlfriend?" "Of course," she replied firmly. "Just ask him and you'll see." An idea struck me. Using my alternate account, I messaged my main account and staged a conversation. "Bro, do you have a girlfriend?" "No, really. Don't lie to me." "I'm serious, I don't." I sent the screenshots to Victoria, emphasizing, "See? He says he doesn't have a girlfriend." Victoria was incredulous. "How is that possible? Is this really your brother?" She sent a screenshot of my main account's profile and then fell silent, seemingly lost in thought. Much later, I received a message from her on my main account. JJ, do you not like me anymore? A dull ache spread through my chest, but it quickly faded. I forced myself to type casually. It's been over a year now. Aren't you tired of this? Her reply came swiftly. No, not at all. If there's something I'm not doing well, tell me, I'll change. JJ, you promised you wouldn't leave me. The ache returned, sharper this time, but dragging this out any longer would only torment both of us. I steeled myself and typed, I'm sorry, let's break up. With that, I blocked Victoria. An emptiness settled over me, but there was no turning back now. This way, Victoria would never know she had unknowingly dated one of her own students. I tried to go about my life as usual, but I found myself missing her in the smallest moments, when someone cut in front of me in the cafeteria line, or when I was assigned a tedious task. My first instinct was always to complain to Victoria, only to remember I had blocked her. Victoria briefly attempted to reconnect through my alternate account, but after I repeatedly claimed that my brother had rejected her, she stopped reaching out. Perhaps she had finally accepted it. The only trace of her in my life now was the faculty spotlight poster of her on the wall of the academic building. Beyond that, we were completely disconnected. One day, Trevor asked me to fix his computer. While I was troubleshooting, I overheard him on the phone. Normally composed, Trevor suddenly sounded panicked. What? Which hospital? I'm coming right now. I asked casually, What's wrong, Trevor? Did someone get sick? Trevor hurriedly packed his things. Lily, Victoria, you know her, right? She's been feeling unwell these past few days and just fainted at home. I froze. Victoria was in the hospital? Without thinking, I grabbed Trevor's sleeve. What happened to her? Startled by my sudden action, Trevor explained, She hasn't been eating the past few days, or she just collapsed. It felt like a punch to the gut. She wasn't eating, was it because of me? Before I could ask more, Trevor had already slung his bag over his shoulder and rushed out the door. I sat anxiously in Professor Trevor's office, waiting for what felt like 2 hours. Unable to hold back any longer, I called him. It took a while before he finally answered, and his voice was tinged with exhaustion. Jordy, he said. I held the phone tight. Professor Trevor, I wanted to ask about Dr. Lee. How is she doing? Realizing how inappropriate my concern might seem, I quickly added, I have a relative who works at the hospital. Maybe I can help? Professor Trevor sighed, frustrated but appreciative. Thanks, Jordy, but it's fine. That silly girl got herself into this mess after a breakup. Low blood sugar, plus her chronic stomach issues acting up. She needs to stay in the hospital for a few days. Hearing my suspicions confirmed, I didn't know how to feel. I found myself blurting out, Can I visit Dr. Lee? I've taken care of my mom during her hospital stays before. I'm experienced. Professor Trevor considered for a moment and said, If you're willing to help, that would be great. I have a lecture this afternoon, so it's good timing. Jordy, I trust you. She's my daughter, by the way, only 4 or 5 years older than you. Just don't treat her like a teacher, okay? I froze. Lily was his daughter? No wonder he had been so worried earlier. For the first time, I turned down Ryan's invitation to attend the lecture. Instead, I followed the address Professor Trevor gave me and quickly arrived at the hospital. After a brief handover, Professor Trevor left, and I stepped into the hospital room. Lily was propped up against the headboard, an IV drip attached to her hand. She looked pale and fragile, with a hint of redness around her eyes. Hearing me enter, she glanced my way but quickly turned her head back. Quietly, I walked over, picked up an orange from the bedside table and began peeling it. After hesitating for a long time, I finally spoke. Dr. Lee, I said cautiously. My brother told me everything. He said the breakup wasn't because of anything wrong with you, just that you weren't a good match. He also really doesn't want to see you like this. I handed her the perfectly peeled orange. He said he hopes you'll take good care of yourself. Lily looked down at the orange in my hand as if lost in thought. After a moment of silence, she picked a plum from the fruit basket and handed it to me. You should eat something too. I shook my head. Thank you, but I don't like plums. She froze for a second, then looked up at me intently. You and your brother are really alike. Neither of you like plums, and you both peel the pith off oranges. These were small personal habits I had once casually mentioned to an online friend. The fact that she remembered made my hand tremble slightly. Really? I stammered. Lily's gaze bore into mine. Even your voice sounds similar. Panicking, I deliberately lowered my voice. No, it doesn't. She suddenly sat up straighter, as if regaining some strength. Don't fake your voice. I deepened my tone even further. I'm not faking. Her penetrating gaze seemed to see right through me. Then, out of nowhere, she asked, "Why is your phone wallpaper a picture of your brother's dog?" I improvised an excuse. I thought it was cute, so I used it. The rest of the visit passed in tense silence. Lily occasionally asked me strange, pointed questions, keeping me on edge the entire time. Once I saw her finish some porridge and vegetables, I finally felt it was okay to leave. That evening, back at school, I received a call from Professor Trevor. He sounded cheerful. "Jordy, you really are experienced. That silly girl hasn't been eating at all, but now she finally has her appetite back. She says she only wants to eat when you're there. Would you mind visiting her again over the next few days?" I rarely dared to refuse Professor Trevor's requests, especially since this situation was partly my fault. But why did Lily tell him that? Could she have figured something out? The more I thought about it, the more nervous I became, and I barely slept that night. The next day, I dragged myself to the hospital with dark circles under my eyes to bring Lily her meal. As soon as she saw me, she frowned. "What happened to you?" I blinked, confused. She reached out, her cool fingers brushing against the dark circles under my eyes. "You didn't sleep well?" Startled, I stepped back, putting some distance between us. "I'm fine." She lowered her gaze and quietly began opening the food container. In a soft voice, she asked, "I have to stay here for another week. Will you come every day?" I shot up from my chair. "Didn't Professor Trevor say 3 days?" Lily looked up at me, her lips pressed together, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. My resolve wavered instantly. "Fine, a week it is." Only then did she smile, a rare, genuine smile. As I sat beside her, watching her eat carefully, her gaze suddenly shifted to the bed next to hers. A couple was eating together. The girl sat on the bed, her right arm in a cast, pouting. "My arm's broken, you should feed me." The boy chuckled helplessly and began feeding her spoonfuls of food. Lily's eyes stayed fixed on the girl's injured arm. Then she glanced at her own hands. A fleeting emotion crossed her face. The next day, when I arrived, I was startled to find Lily's right hand wrapped in a thick layer of bandages. "What happened?" I asked, alarmed. She looked down at her hand with a sigh. "After you left yesterday, I tried to peel an apple for myself and, well, this happened." I quickly sat by her bed. "Can you still move it?" She lowered her eyes, her tone shy. "I tried, but it's difficult. The doctor said I shouldn't use my right hand. But I'm not good with my left hand. What should I do?" Her gaze flickered toward the food container as her voice grew softer and softer. I scratched my head awkwardly. "So, does this mean I have to feed you?" Then I immediately shook my head. "No, that's not." She didn't wait for me to finish my spiral of self-doubt before looking at me with immense gratitude. "This is too much trouble for you. Thank you so much. You're so kind." Why did it feel like there was a hint of expectation in Victoria's gaze? I stiffly opened the food container, stiffly picked up a spoon, and stiffly brought a spoonful of porridge to her lips. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at me with a cheerful smile. I avoided her gaze, feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles. She ate each bite with increasing enthusiasm, finishing a large bowl of porridge within minutes and still looking like she wanted more. "Is that it?" she asked. I shook my head in relief. By the third day, I had gotten somewhat used to feeding Victoria porridge. As long as I convinced myself she was just a giant cabbage, I could power through her gaze that seemed deep enough to drown someone. Determined, I brought another spoonful to her mouth. Suddenly, there was the sound of something dropping near the door. I looked over and saw, to my horror, a small crowd gathered at the hospital room entrance. Teachers, students, most of them holding flowers or gifts, were all staring at us. At the front of the group was Ryan, my roommate, who was frozen in shock, a fruit basket slipping from his hands onto the floor. By the time I realized what was happening, I was still mid-motion, leaning over to feed Victoria. Ryan quickly snapped out of it, hurriedly herding everyone back out of the room while apologizing profusely. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt." He even closed the door behind him. But apparently the room wasn't soundproof because I could clearly hear their chatter outside. "Oh my God, there's actually a guy who can get that close to Professor Lee. Wait, I couldn't see clearly from my angle. Were they about to kiss? What are you saying? They were just eating. But seriously, they looked like they were this close to kissing. And did you see the way Professor Lee was looking at him? She might as well have been eating him alive with her eyes. Why are they having a romance in a hospital room? I'm so jealous I could cry. I sat there, unsure of what to do. I glanced at Victoria, who had clearly heard the gossip as well. She slowly curled her lips into a smile, amused by the situation. My face turned so red I thought it might explode. I couldn't take it anymore and stood up awkwardly. Should I go out there and explain things to them? Victoria grabbed my wrist and tilted her head. Explain what? I stammered. That we're not, she cut me off. They're just making things up. No need to explain. When I didn't respond right away, she blinked at me innocently and asked, do you mind what they're saying? I quickly shook my head. She let out a small sigh of relief. Then it's fine, let them think what they want. Realizing the ambiguity of her words, she quickly added, it's all just a misunderstanding. No need to take it seriously. The misunderstanding still had consequences. As soon as I got back to the dorm, Ryan interrogated me like a detective. Jordy, when did you and Professor Lee? Luckily, I was at the front of the group, so no one saw your face clearly, he said, his tone half joking, half serious. I waved my hands frantically. No, it's not what you think. Trevor asked me to look after her, that's all. Ryan didn't believe me in the slightest. Come on. Professor Lee's eyes were practically glued to you. Are you seriously going to tell me there's nothing going on? I kept shaking my head. He got even more worked up. Do you have any idea how many people have a crush on Professor Lee? The line stretches from our department all the way to the Language Institute, and yet she only lets you get close to her. If you don't make a move, I'll lose all respect for you. Make a move? I shouted. All I want is to safely escort Victoria out of the hospital. That's it. That's all. A week later, Victoria was finally discharged. Just before leaving, I casually asked the doctor about her condition. The doctor shook her head, which sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Then she explained, the patient in bed 3? Perfectly healthy. 2 days of IV treatment and she would have been fine. But she insisted she wasn't feeling well and demanded to stay for a week of observation. Such a pretty young woman. Why does she like staying in the hospital? I watched the doctor walk away, shaking her head, while my mind raced with questions. Victoria chose to stay in the hospital. Why? Hospitals aren't exactly comfortable. Wait, could she have done this on purpose? Was she trying to mess with me because of her breakup with my brother? Even though the hospital was close to campus, delivering her meals every day wasn't exactly easy for me. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. I resolved never to attend one of her lectures again. But before I could fully commit to that decision, my phone pinged with a message from her. Jordan, come to my office. When I arrived, Victoria was the only one in the room. The atmosphere was tense as we stared at each other. She pointed at her computer screen and broke the silence. Just got this from the administration office. The course schedule for next semester. Your class is required to take my course. I froze. Why was she telling me this? Was she really trying to get revenge? Seeing my nervous expression, she chuckled. Relax, I just thought you should know. I nodded dumbly. She hadn't finished speaking when she suddenly let out a sigh. I really miss your brother. Life feels so dull without him. I tensed up even more. You like him that much? Victoria looked at me seriously and nodded. I really do. Do you think he'd consider getting back together with me? I'd agree to anything. I was at a complete loss. He probably has his reasons. She studied my face. And this is just a hypothetical, if he broke up with me because of some kind of status difference, do you think he could at least discuss it with me first? My heart skipped a beat. How did she know about that? Even so, I tried to stay calm. I don't know. I can't speak for him. Victoria didn't press the issue. She capped her pen and said, By the way, I'd like to ask you for a favor. Pass my message to your brother. I need to meet him. Can you do that? I was about to politely decline when Lily pointed at the course list on her laptop, silently hinting, This course you're taking next semester, I'm teaching it. I immediately agreed. No way was I going to risk upsetting her. Everyone knows how tough Lily's courses are. Her academic standards are sky high, and she often gives closed book exams. Clearly, showing me the course list was her way of threatening me, but there was no way I could meet Lily myself. Luckily, I actually have an older cousin. After pleading with him for 5 hours, he finally agreed to meet Lily on my behalf. The meeting took place at a charming French restaurant that Lily chose. I hid a short distance away, carefully observing their interaction. When my cousin arrived, Lily looked up and smiled, but her smile froze for just a moment before she quickly recovered. They shook hands and began chatting enthusiastically. For an hour and a half, they didn't stop talking. They seemed to be having a great time. Watching them, I unconsciously crushed the small leather cap I was holding. When it was finally over, my cousin walked over and patted me on the back, pulling me out of my daze. His expression was full of excitement. "Where the hell did you meet someone this amazing online? Break up? Are you crazy? I'll keep dating her for you." "But," he added, "she didn't say anything about getting back together. We just talked about random stuff. Doesn't seem like she's trying to patch things up." I blinked. "Are you serious?" He glared at me. "Do I look like I'm joking? Honestly, she's stunning. I really like her." I hesitated for a moment. "Well, I think I like her too." "Then go tell her you're switching to a new phone number," he replied without hesitation, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. He agreed so quickly that he immediately turned to chase after her. But just as he stood up, he froze. "Lily, you're still here?" I turned around at the sound of his voice and saw Lily standing not far behind us, her figure backlit by the light. She gazed at me silently, her voice calm and steady. "Jordan, how long were you planning to keep pretending?" I was stunned. After apologizing profusely to my cousin, I was reluctantly dragged into a private room in the restaurant by Lily. Sitting in the chair, I felt as small as a quail. She called the waiter and casually ordered several of my favorite dishes. Then she turned to me. "Anything else you want to eat?" I shook my head repeatedly. She closed the menu. "By the way, I've been watching you out of the corner of my eye this whole time." My lips pressed into a tight line. "Really?" All I saw was how well she got along with my cousin. When I didn't say anything else, she tilted her head and leaned in close to study my face. "Do you really not want to talk to me?" Her flawless face was so close to mine that I couldn't look away. I forced a nervous smile. When? When did you find out?" The moment I asked, I regretted it. If she had known earlier, then all the acting I'd done before would be incredibly embarrassing. "If you don't want to answer, that's fine too," she interrupted. "I want to answer. As long as it's you, I want to tell you everything." She pretended to think for a moment. "I started suspecting when I noticed your little habits at the hospital. Then I asked my dad for your contact info." She didn't need to say anything else. I felt like I wanted to crawl into a hole. She had known since the hospital? No wonder she had been unusually friendly toward me in the days after. In hindsight, it made sense. Too many people at school knew how to contact me. It wouldn't have taken her long to figure it out. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lie to you. I frantically apologized, bowing over and over on the verge of tears. "I promise I'll keep your secret. I swear I'll never let your private photos leak." Lily, however, grabbed my arm firmly, stopping me from bowing again. She looked into my eyes seriously. "You never need to apologize to me. Even though I selfishly wanted to keep those photos just for you, if you really want to share them, that's okay too. As for the secret you mentioned, at the lecture that day, everyone already knew I had a boyfriend. I wasn't trying to hide it just because it was an online relationship." Her gentle, focused gaze gave me a faint sense of peace, but I still felt uneasy. "Then, could you promise not to fail me in your class?" She rubbed her temples in exasperation. "Who said I was going to fail you?" I reminded her, "But you said that day that I'd be taking your class next semester." She sighed again and explained patiently. "I just meant that we'd still be seeing each other often next semester. I thought that if I pointed it out, you might consider revealing yourself and meeting me. If you hadn't agreed to meet, I would have kept asking. Who would have guessed you'd send your cousin instead?" I sat there, stunned, unable to respond. She continued, "My dad told me you went to the hospital voluntarily. You offered to take care of me. To me, that shows I have a place in your heart. So why did you break up with me?" "Your attitude changed after the lecture, so I figured you must have realized during the lecture that the person you were dating was me." "That means," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "the only reason you broke up with me is that I disappointed you in real life. But you clearly liked the photos I sent you, so it's not about my appearance. That leaves only one reason, my identity. Her logical analysis left me speechless. She knew everything already. Finally, she seemed to summon all her courage to ask the last question. Jordan, you don't like student-teacher relationships, do you? I blurted out my answer almost instantly. No. She looked startled. Then what is it? I lowered my gaze, avoiding her eyes. I just felt like someone like you wouldn't like me. And also, Dr. Lee, do you know how many people adore you? Now that you know the person behind that account is just an ordinary student like me, do you still like me? She seemed stunned, a look of disbelief gradually surfacing. I felt a pang of sadness. Was I right after all? But Victoria blurted out, "You think you're an ordinary student? The president of the volunteer club, someone consistently in the top 3 of the department, a 2-time state gold medalist in academic competitions, and my dad's most prized student. You call that ordinary? And do you even realize how good-looking you are? From the very beginning, I liked the real you underneath. It doesn't matter what persona you're wearing, I'll always like you. As for the taboo of teacher-student relationships, if it's with you, I'd be overjoyed." My face flushed as I opened my mouth, but no words came out. After a while, I finally stammered, "Why did you even check my grades?" She laughed lightly. "I didn't. My dad mentioned it. He really likes you." Hearing her words, I suddenly felt a hint of confidence. I straightened my posture, though I still stammered. "But your image has always been, cold and untouchable. I bet you wouldn't want people to know what you're like when you're with me." She raised an eyebrow. "Image? I've never created an image for myself. It's just that I'm genuinely uninterested in many things. But you're different. If you want me to change my image, I'm all for it." In the end, Victoria pouted and asked me to remove her from my block list. As soon as I did, I received a $5,000 transfer. I was stunned. "What are you doing?" She gave me a piercing look. "This is to test whether you've really unblocked me. Back when we first broke up, I tried so many times." I felt a little embarrassed and tried to change the subject. "Why are you testing me now?" She turned the tables quickly. "You once said you'd pay me back $50 for strawberries. Will you honor that now?" She pointed at a line in our chat history where I had sent it myself. "Can you fulfill it now?" I covered my face. "But you sent way too much," she said matter-of-factly. "Now I want you to pay me back 100-fold with 100 kisses." Even though she was so outgoing now, she still maintained her untouchable ice queen persona at school. She remained that unapproachable figure to everyone else. Why? Because I felt that side of her, the private, candid side, should belong to me alone. Ryan, my roommate, often asked about my progress with Victoria. I kept my lips sealed, but late at night I often received her suggestive photos. As I stared at them, my face turned red. Victoria would tease me. "I knew you liked them. You lied when you said you didn't." I was mortified. "What do you mean?" She quickly clarified. "I mean, it's a good thing you like them, and since I have them, I can send them to you every day to make you happy." My face grew even hotter as I glanced at the latest photo she sent. In a panic, I covered the screen, terrified someone might see it. Her pants in the picture. They just kept getting lower and lower. By the following semester, as Victoria had said, I needed to take one of her classes. On the first day, she stood at the podium and introduced herself. Her extensive research achievements filled 3 whole pages, but she brushed over them briefly. When she mentioned her relationship status, however, she made a point to add, "I'm currently single but very happy with my boyfriend." Her smiling gaze swept across the room before landing directly on me. Shrinking back into the corner of the second-to-last row, I buried my head, not daring to meet her eyes. Ryan tugged at my sleeve. "Jordy, look, Dr. Lee is smiling so much. People used to say she was super strict, but she seems to really like our class." Cautiously, I glanced up, only to meet her gaze head-on. A sense of foreboding washed over me. Sure enough, as soon as it was time for class interaction, she gently called out, "Jordan, would you like to contribute?" While everyone thought she was being extra kind, to me, it felt like she was out to get me. That single class had me standing up more times than I had in the entire previous semester. "Sis, could you tone it down a notch? I'm begging you," I pleaded in a quiet corner, clasping my hands together. She raised an eyebrow. I thought I was being discreet. I widened my eyes. "Don't you know everyone's saying I'm your favorite student?" She adjusted her glasses and nodded earnestly. Well, they're not wrong. You are. I wanted to die right then and there. Why did she have to be so good at sweet-talking me? Grabbing her by the collar, I hissed, "We agreed to keep this a secret until I graduate." But in my attempt to act fierce, I accidentally pulled too hard, causing two of her tightly fastened buttons to pop off. She smiled mischievously and looked at me. "JJ, what are you doing?" Then she leaned in close to my ear and whispered seductively, "I'll let you look all you want tonight." Victoria claimed she was trying to keep a low profile, but every time we had class, she'd seek me out and interact with me. The moment she entered the classroom, she'd scan the room to find my seat. Everyone noticed how much she favored me, and before the midterm exams, classmates bombarded me with messages. "Jordan, please, could you ask Dr. Lee not to make it a closed book test? It's just the midterm, she's going to kill us." After some thought, I turned around, only to bump straight into Victoria's embrace. She bent down to look at me and chuckled softly. "You want a closed book exam too?" I nodded enthusiastically. "I do." She pointed to her lips. "Kiss me then." I leaned down to oblige, but as soon as my lips were about to leave hers, she wrapped her arms around my waist. "One more," she murmured. Eyes wide open, I couldn't even make a sound before she deepened the kiss, gently parting my lips. As the kiss intensified, I unknowingly lowered her onto the couch, and her toes hooked around my thigh. I instinctively pressed her down, taking control and claiming her breath with abandon. I lost track of how much time had passed. She struggled to catch her breath, pushing against my chest with a hint of desperation. I quickly let her go and grabbed my phone nearby to send out a notification, "Midterm exam, open book format." Standing quietly in the background, I couldn't help but widen my eyes in disbelief. Who would have thought that the famously restrained Dr. Lee was anything but restrained? A year later, I graduated, and dating Lily no longer had to be a secret. While we were strolling hand in hand through the streets one day, Lily suddenly sighed. "I feel so happy." She lowered her gaze to our intertwined fingers and mused, "Is this what they mean by holding hands and growing old together?" I thought for a moment and replied, "We're not old yet. Let's save that for later." That evening, as we passed by a bakery, a radio ad floated out from inside. "Mid-Autumn Festival is here. Buy some mooncakes and spend the most romantic night gazing at the moon with your special someone." Lily paused in her tracks and tilted her head to look up at the sky. There, a bright full moon hung high, casting its ethereal glow. She stared at it, lost in thought. "Jordan, do you know something?" she said, her voice soft. "I've always thought the moon was so pure and beautiful. Its light touches everything, yet there's only one moon in the entire sky." Following her gaze, I looked up, but before I could fully take in the sight, I suddenly felt a quick, soft kiss land on my cheek. She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear, and whispered, "Jordan, you're my moon." Under the moonlight, our fingers, still tightly clasped, seemed to hold on even more firmly, as if silently making a promise. Holding hands and growing old together,